welcome back to Exposing the Hidden Agenda, the Dragon and Planned Parenthood, Part 2. In Part 1, we actually uncovered the ideology behind Alfred Kinsey. If you do your research, you'll find out that Alfred Kinsey actually was a pedophile. He was a sex addict. He had an abnormal attitude, an abnormal appetite regarding sexuality. Obviously, his ideology reflected that, but the serious issue is he is considered one of the experts when it comes to sexuality in our culture. And because of that, a lot of his ideology has found its way into the curriculums that our kids are being taught in the public school system. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do now in Part 2 is get a little bit deeper to understand what this curriculum is all about. We're going to get a little bit more understanding into the safe sex alliance, the individuals that make up this, I'm going to call it an unholy trinity. I think that once you understand what they are promoting, you will be able to connect the dots and see how their ideology is the same as Alfred Kinsey, which is the same as Aleister Crowley, which is the same as the devil himself. The alliance vision for the United States includes the following. Again, we're talking about the Safe Sex Alliance. Number one, they believe that beginning in kindergarten, children should be taught explicit information about sexual matters. Now, this is really disturbing because I actually have the literature, and when you see what they're teaching our children as early as 4 years old, it would really be an eye-opener because it's exposing them to information that they're not mature enough to handle. But again, since Kinsey's ideology says that babies are even able to experience sexual gratification, remember, he said there is nothing wrong because there's no such thing as abnormal or normal, no such thing as illicit or licit. We believe that, again, his ideology is all about whatever you want to do, do it. Remember, wherever thou wilt. The alliance vision for the United States includes the following. Adults should prepare kids to have sex rather than prevent them from having sex. Again, we're going to see how this has been implemented, and I know for some people this is mind-blowing. It's like we're in a whole different world. But this is why it's so important that we expose this agenda, because it is the devil's aim to corrupt our children, because he knows if he corrupts our children, they one day will be parents. And that level of corruption that he has exposed them to now will be exposed to future generations. In essence, this is how he's going to change the moral standards of this country. They also believe that adolescents should have access to pornography. What is so serious about this, my brothers and sisters, especially when it comes to males, it appears that being exposed to pornography is like a rite of passage. But it is a demonic exposure that has destroyed many lives. When children are exposed to pornography, they now have a curiosity. They now are developing a sexual appetite that's not natural and not normal, because there's no way God would have intended for children to be exposed to this type of sexual exposure. What's so serious about this is Satan knows when children are exposed to pornography, because of the appetite it develops, they're more likely to get involved with sexual activity. And we're going to see how that type of reality plays into the marketing strategy of Planned Parenthood in a very few seconds. Sex education, according to them, and discussion about teen sexual activity should be value-free and void of discussion about morality and virtue. Again, when you take out righteousness, then you only have unrighteousness. When you take out light, you only have darkness. And what they believe is, since there's no such thing as right and wrong, since they are promoting do as thou wilt is the whole of the law, then why even introduce morality or discussion on virtue? Of course, that's diametrically opposed to what God has asked us to do. As a matter of fact, God said that we should be holy as He is holy. God said that we should actually control our bodies, that we should live in a manner that's going to bring Him glory. But of course, with this type of training, with this type of education of anything goes, you can imagine how young kids that are exposed to this education will start to act. And of course, this is part of the goal of Satan himself. They also say that condoms should be readily available and accessible in middle schools and high schools. I'm going to show you in a few minutes where they actually have school systems that are allowing kids as young as pre-K to have exposure to condoms. Now, again, I agree with you. It does not make any sense. But this is where we are in this culture, and it's important that the people of God know how far Satan has brought this erroneous information and how he has integrated it into our kids' learning curriculum. They also state that all abstinence until marriage programs should be eliminated from public schools. I wonder why. We know that God's will for everyone is remain abstinent until they're married. We know that God's will for everyone is to protect them from being exposed to demonic influences. But because Satan's goal is to kill, steal, and destroy, again, it is his effort to remove all focus on anything that's righteous, on anything that's good, because when you take out anything that's good or everything that's good and everything that's righteous, you only have evil. How in the world could we, as individuals of light, agree that we should take this type of education out of the school system? But let's go a little further. Forget about the school system. I submit to you, as I said earlier in earlier presentations, we as Christians, parents should not allow our children to be taught anything about sexuality in the school system anyway. So let them do what they're going to do. We should train a child in the way they should go when they're young, so when they're old, it will not depart from him or her. I submit that when we give our kids over to the Philistines, when we give our kids over to individuals who have pagan ideas and ideologies, how can we expect them to act any other way than what we're seeing in our culture? This Safe Sex Alliance also says this: parents should not be included in decisions about contraceptive and abortion services provided to their adolescent children. And this has become law in many school systems where adolescents can have access to contraceptives, they can have access to abortion, they can have access to being treated for HIV and other STDs, and the parents it's not required that the parents even be made aware of that. It's not required that the parents have the say-so. They actually have introduced what they call minor rights, where a minor child now can dictate what they want to happen when it comes to sexuality. Last but not least, the concern I have with this, when it says a national socialized medical system should pay for all abortions and contraceptive services, we have that already in place, and it started with Obamacare. Why is this so serious? Because, again, Planned Parenthood knows when there's a law enacted that gives their children free access to abortions, when there are laws enacted that say that the parents cannot be involved, then they know that their stream of young ladies who will get pregnant are going to be continued. That's part of their marketing strategy. Now, from a business perspective, it's a cash flow issue, but it's a lot deeper than that because, again, it's about the enemy killing, stealing, and destroying a precious life through an activity that now has been given the sanction of the United States government as well as our school system. The Alliance's second goal is hidden in plain sight. It wants to protect its monopoly of federal funds for school sex education programs. It's all about the money, but I also added it's a demonic agenda. Why? Because if this Safe Sex Alliance are the only ones that are now providing the sex education to our children, and since they have embraced the Keynesian theory, which again can be traced all the way back to Aleister Crowley, which again can be traced all the way back to the devil himself, then we know what's happening. Most children go through the school system. Most children are now going to be indoctrinated to embrace a reality or embrace a concept and principle that's going to change the moral standards in this country. Again, the Bible says the devil was wrought with the woman, and he went to make war with the remnant of her seed. How can the devil successfully, again, attack the church? By attacking our children. How can he change the morality of the church? By changing the morality of our children. And how's he doing it? Through sexuality, through the educative process that all of our kids, most of our kids are going through. I'm going to show you a video clip real quick to give you an idea of how this now has been implemented. People said, well, it can't be that bad. Watch and see.
And kids. They're going together younger than ever at this Provincetown Elementary School, which goes from 6th grade right down to pre-K. Under a new policy here, condoms are available for any student that asks at any age.
I don't know a magic age to put on it. Do you?
It's not just the age question that's raising eyebrows, though. Also, the part of the policy that says parents can't say no.
I think that the parents should have some input into the decision, but that I support education and awareness.
It just seems it's a little too young. Middle school age might be more appropriate.
The superintendent says she wouldn't expect first graders or kindergartners to ask for condoms, except to maybe blow them up as balloons. But when the students do ask for condoms at any age, they'll also have to talk to a counselor or a nurse.
The fact that parents don't know what their children are doing at times doesn't mean that their children don't need to be safe, and that we don't have a responsibility to help them be safe.
Did you see it? Could you recognize some of the goals of the Safe Sex Alliance being implemented in that video clip? Think about this. Kids between pre-K and 6th grade are now able to gain access to condoms. And what is so serious about this, my brothers and sisters, and the parents can't say no. Now, of course, you heard the principal say she does not expect kindergartens or first grades to ask for this type of contraceptive. But my question is, if you don't expect them to ask, why are they included in the policy? If you're only targeting a specific age, then why include pre-K, first grade, second grade, third grade? You know why? Because again, the ideology is children should not be prevented from having sex. They should be prepared to have sex. Now you're seeing how this demonic agenda or this demonic ideology is now being implemented in our schools. Parents can't say no, and even though they are required, so they say, to talk with a counselor, that counselor is going to be one that has the ideology or the concept of, I'm going to help you do it right. Not that you should not do it, not that you should embrace virginity, not that it is dangerous and it's something that God would not be pleased with, but let me show you how to use this. Let me show you how to have pleasure. This, I don't understand how, again, this has been integrated in our school systems without an uproar. But God says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. The sad reality is most parents don't even understand what the sexual curriculum is all about in their own public school systems. I submit that it should not be a reality that we are ignorant about. We should stand against it, but more importantly, don't allow your child to be exposed to that type of training. Don't allow your child to be exposed to that type of education. Why? Because the Bible does say it. You train a child. What you put into that child when they're young, when they get old, that training, whether it be bad or good, will not depart from it. And the enemy knows that the earlier he can get a child involved with an abnormal sexual appetite, the earlier he can get that child involved with sexuality. Now, let's get a little bit deeper and understand who makes up this safe sex alliance. I want to say before we go any further, they're the ones that came up with the lie about people having safe sex. And I always kind of laugh at that lie because I ask the question if there's any such thing as safe sin. And of course, anyone in their right mind would say there's no such thing as safe sin. Then I ask the second question, is sexual activity outside of God's will sin? Again, anyone in their right mind that knows anything about righteousness is going to say anything outside of God's will is sin. So if you take sexual activity outside of God's will and you label it sin, and you said there's no such thing as safe sin, then any sexual activity outside of God's will cannot be safe. And of course, this is what our kids are being told, that they can sin and be safe about it. Why is this so important? Because again, it's not just a physical situation or a physical issue, it's a spiritual issue. Anything dealing with sin is spiritual. And the enemy knows that if he can normalize sin, and because God has enabled sexual activity to have a very nice feeling, that's a very, very slippery slope. It's a very, very easy way of getting people not only involved in sin, but addicted to it as well. But be that as it may, I want to go further into the individual organizations that make up this Safe Sex Alliance. Education project began in July of 2007, so you can see it's been going on for quite a while. When staff from Advocates for Youth, that's the first organization, Answer, that's the second organization, and of course Seekers, which we've already covered, the third organization, first met to discuss the future of sex education in this country. Now, again, I remember in school, we always referred to it as the birds and the bees. Why is it that these organizations are coming together to discuss, again, the future of sex education in our country? It may be because there's a hidden agenda. It may be because there's something that the enemy wants to do through our school system using sexuality. It said that at the time, each organization was looking ahead to the possibility of a future without federal abstinence-only until marriage funding, and simultaneously found themselves exploring the question of how best to advance comprehensive sex education in schools. How in the world could these three organizations get together and make it an aim to eliminate all abstinence only until marriage sexual education unless there are people in the government that were also part of this agenda? Nothing happens by accident in our culture. Everything we do, everything we come in contact with is influenced by good or by evil. And it's very, very clear, my brothers and sisters, anybody in their right mind would see that there is an agenda, there was an agenda, and we're seeing it now come to fruition. Abstinence only until marriage programs. It was interesting. This was on the site for Advocates for Youth, one of the members of, again, the Safe Sex Alliance. And what they are promoting is abstinence only until marriage programs are unethical, harmful, and stigmatizing. In essence, they are saying the reason that these programs should be eliminated because they're actually harmful to our children. Now, how idiotic can that be? That would keep them safe. That would prevent them from catching STDs. That which will prevent teenage pregnancy. That which will prevent becoming one with demonic hosts. That which would please God, they're saying is something that we should take away. Again, you're seeing now the hidden agenda. You're seeing that Satan has taken this specific curriculum. And remember we said in times past that the scriptures tell us that when it comes to sin, all manner of sin is done outside the body, but the Bible says fornication or sexual sin is done against the body. Again, we're seeing why Aleister Crowley came up with this demonic concept of sex magic. We're seeing why Alfred Kinsey is used by Satan to develop a theory or ideology that says anything goes when it comes to sexuality. We're seeing how Satan is using this awesome gift from God as a weapon against humanity. And the sad reality is, my brothers and sisters, too many of our children have become victims. As a matter of fact, too many of us have become victims because we were not taught, we were not exposed to what I call biblical sexuality. Only the truth, again, the Bible says, will set us free. But you're seeing now, as we unfold this agenda, how it's being used, and we will continue to see how Satan is using it to the destruction of our children. In May of 2008, Advocates, Answers, and Seekers formalized these discussions with funding from the Ford, George Gund, and Grove Foundation, and the FOSS project, Future of Sex Education, was launched. Future of Sex Education. What they need to say is how we are actually changing the morality of America by utilizing the sexual education curriculum that we've designed to replace the abstinence only until marriage push that was so prominent throughout America. Now that push has been replaced with, again, a demonic ideology that must be exposed. Why do we call this the dragon in Planned Parenthood? Because we are unmasking, or we are exposing the agenda between a confederation of the dragon, the devil, and Planned Parenthood, his organization, that he is using, again, to corrupt an entire generation. We'll see how the devil is using Planned Parenthood as a conduit for getting our youth, getting our children exposed to ideologies and beliefs and activities that's actually going to destroy them. Nothing is done by accident. It's very, very interesting when you connect the dots and you see the consistency. One thing about Satan, he's consistent. He's consistently evil. There is a very distinct and a recognizable method that he's using to kill, steal, and destroy. If we can identify individuals, if we can identify organizations that are embracing these ideologies, then it's real easy to know what to keep our kids away from. This part 2 has been geared toward going a little bit deeper, again, to show you what the Safe Sex Alliance is all about, a little bit deeper into helping you understand how their theories, how their principles and practices are implemented into the school system. In part 3, we're going to go even deeper. Thank you so very much for listening to us. We hope you have enjoyed, again, part 2 of the Dragon and Planned Parenthood. And stay tuned for part 3. May God bless you.